Welcome to the Fall 2016 Hyatt Distinguished Leadership Lecture. My name is Ajo Kennedy. I serve as Associate Chair, and it's a wonderful pleasure to welcome you to this event. We're grateful to Ken Hyatt for endowing this series, and also to MBP for their generous sponsorship of the Hyatt dinner. I'm going to go ahead and introduce Jem Hamilton, who is a 1977 graduate of CEE, who will then introduce our speaker, Emmy Montanye. Jem is a member of the CEE External Advisory Board. He chairs the Communications Committee. He's a member of the Hyatt Selection Committee, a supporter and contributor to the Mason Redevelopment Project. He chairs the State of Georgia Stakeholder Advisory Board on the Erosion Certification Program. He's a past chair of ACEC Georgia and the Georgia Engineering Alliance, and he's the founder of Southern Civil Engineers, a firm where he worked for 30 years prior to joining Kimley-Horn in 2013, where he now serves as vice president. He is State Engineer of the Year 2010, an award he was given by ACEC and the Georgia Engineering Alliance. Jem is also a lifelong Atlanta resident. Please join me in welcoming Jem.
I have the honor and privilege of introducing our speaker today. And this speaker is someone I have gotten to know, and I can now say is a partner of mine for the last 3 years since I joined Kimley-Horn. She is a practicing Yellow Jacket engineer. She gets up every day and makes really great decisions to complex problems for our clients. And she also, but the really magic with Emmy is that she really leads fabulous teams to do the work. She's a best-in-class leader in every way. I'm going to tell you a little more about that. Values, stewardship, authenticity, compassion, soul, and self-discipline are just few of the descriptors that I will put forth about Emmy. But there's more. There's the engineering. And I invite you that when you get in your car and you leave the campus and you drive from downtown to midtown, you look at the skyscrapers, you look at all that's been built there, think of Emmy Montanye. She had a lot to do with all that. But her current resume, listen to this. The Braves SunTrust Park. Have you heard about the Braves SunTrust Park and everything around it? Have you heard about the Mercedes Falcons Stadium? Emmy's involved with that too. The Emory Midtown Cancer Treatment Center. The Buckhead Atlanta project. And when the Braves left Turner Field, they left an empty stadium. Well, who's on that team to repurpose Turner Field? Emmy Montanye. The College Football Hall of Fame, the NCR corporate headquarters in Tech Square, the Porsche headquarters, that's a cool project. The High Performance Computing Center, I don't know if any of you have heard about that, but that is a fabulous project built just 2 blocks from our office in Midtown, and that's a Georgia Tech and Portman project. It's going to be fabulous for Georgia Tech, it's going to be fabulous for the city of Atlanta. Emmy's involved with all that. Emmy is a great engineer, but also a great leader. There's a great TED Talk by Simon Sinek who talks about the difference between a leader and a great leader. A great leader is one that really is more than what they do. It's their why they do it. Emmy's why is passion. She has passion towards engineering, but she also has significant passion towards the team she leads and their success. She teaches, she mentors, she coaches, and she gets out of the way and lets her team grow. One thing that I like to read to you today one thing that's great about leaders is to hear what people below them say about them. And this is a quote from one of the people that work for her. I am indebted to the trail that Emmy has blazed in the AEC industry. Her trail is direct and well executed, as well as pleasant and fun. She is prolific in our industry. She is not only one of the best engineers I've ever met, she is at her core a business person naturally attuned to client service, excellence, and leadership. Her presence will be felt for generations to come. At Kimley-Horn, Emmy is a senior vice president, and she's an advisor and in the LIFT program. The LIFT program at Kimley-Horn is lasting impact for tomorrow. It's all about growing our firm through the power of women. She's the Atlanta Business Chronicle, one of the Atlanta Business Chronicle current recipients of Women Who Mean Business Mean Business Award. She's a Practice Builder of the Year at Kimley-Horn. And for those who don't know what that is, we have 2,800 employees, 82 offices from coast to coast. The most valuable player is our Practice Builder of the Year, and that's Emmy Montanye. She's been on many boards, including the External Advisory Board, where she'll excel there. So please join me in welcoming a great mom, a great wife, a great engineer, and a great leader, my friend, my partner, Emmy Montanye.
Wow, I'm not sure I have anything left to say. Thank you, Jim. And thank you all of you for coming today. When Dr. DeRost first sent me the invitation to speak, I read it at least 2 times, maybe 3, before I responded, and I said I'd be honored. But then I added, don't forget, I designed sewers. But today, we're not going to focus on the sewers. Today, I want to encourage each of you to be a better engineer. I want to encourage each of you to embrace the everyday opportunities to be a leader. So let's turn the clock back about 30 plus years. I went to a women's college outside Boston. I was studying art history. It took a few years for me to recognize I was really suppressing my love of math. But keep in mind, in the late 1970s, before a lot of you were even born, us girls were not encouraged to love the math. I discovered that we had a dual degree program with Georgia Tech. I applied, I got accepted. I went home, I told my parents, I'm not going back to Boston. And we got in the car and we drove to Atlanta. My father exits onto North Avenue. He immediately turns left into what was then the Techwood housing projects. My mother sang, oh, I thought Georgia Tech would be nicer than this. I'm not sure I like this. I get them back on track. We find Glen Dormitory. They help move me in. And before they leave, my mother says to me, honey, you don't need to stay here. And I said, Mom, I'm good. The next day, I had my first meeting with my advisor. I got out the campus map, and I hiked up the hill, very surprised that Atlanta even had hills, and I found the Mason building. And I sat opposite from Dr. Caseman. There's a few of you that remember Dr. Caseman. He had my transcript. He was studying it. He finally looks up and says, you're going to have to take Calculus 3. And I said, I'm good. And then he said, and differential equations. And I said, I'm good. And then he got just a little bit excited, which is a lot for Dr. Caseman. And he says, what's this 3-dimensional design class? I didn't know at the time that the drafting class, where we learned to draw a box that really looked like a box, was called 3-dimensional design. I enthusiastically responded that it was a sculpture class, studio-based, working with wood and clay and bronze. He got very quiet. And Dr. Caseman looked at me and said, you shouldn't even be here. I stood up. I probably said thank you. And then I said, I'm good. But obviously, Ma Tech did not get the best of me because I figured it out and I graduated from Georgia Tech. So let's talk about today. I want to spend today sharing with you some of those skills that I've learned that I believe outside the classroom make us better engineers and make us everyday leaders. So keeping with the theme of sewers, we have 5 buckets today. In each bucket there's a skill. In each bucket there's a real-life business example. So let's start with bucket number 1. Be curious and keep learning. The why. As engineers, we sell knowledge. And we add more value when we can sell current knowledge, and we can sell that knowledge with confidence. And there's so many ways to learn, and I don't need to list them all, but it's getting a lot easier for everybody with technology. You can follow people on Twitter. You can subscribe to a weekly article. You can attend a lecture like this, and hopefully you'll learn something. You can attend a class. You can read a book. But over the years, I've recognized that one of the most important ways to learn is to develop relationships with other people, with different cultures, with different backgrounds, different educations, different experiences, and learn from those people. When I was a young mother with 3 small children, I had a part-time job, and I'm using the word job specifically, and it was in engineering. I was at a function for the women's college that I attended, and Sue Wieland, who's a great leader in the Atlanta arts community, said to me, if I could tell young women anything, I would tell them they don't have to do it all right now. And then she said, I'm turning 50 years old next week. I could learn a whole new profession and I could have a 20-year career. And on my way home that night, I thought about what Sue said. And I realized that our careers really are a journey. And we can help author those journeys. And we don't have to do it all right now. And I realized that my part-time job in engineering was exactly where I wanted to be in my career at that time, because I wanted to be there with our young children. But it also made me realize that there could be a time later when they all were in college that if I chose, I could best invest in my career. I also left with the power of Sue's love of learning. And now I want to use a real-life example that I think highlights the curiosity and the desire to learn. In April of this year, we were invited to propose on the new Under Armour global headquarters in Baltimore. It was a long shot. There was an incumbent, 3 or 4 other very well-established firms. We got shortlisted, and we were pretty excited. At Kimley-Horn, culture is important to us, and we were curious about the Under Armour culture. So we did some research, and we learned that they love their brand. We learned that they live their brand, and their brand is performance-based, and they live it every day. We also learned they protect their brand. We also learned they wear their brand. So we decided that we were going to order Under Armour shirts with our logo on it, and instead of business cards, we were going to pass out Team Under Armour sports cards. Then we spent the next 2 days locked up in a room designing our presentation and rehearsing. On the day of the presentation, we're on at 9 o'clock. They invite us in right at 9 o'clock. As we're walking into this room, about half the size, with about 18 men, 1 woman, everybody's looking down at their devices. They say, go ahead and get started. We have a time crunch. Well, us engineers, that rattles us, right? Because we want to get set up. We want to be sure everything works. We start passing out our cards as one of the men is setting up his computer. One by one, they look up at us, and they start to laugh. We broke the ice. We started to engage and develop a relationship. So we started. We went through the interview. Our last section was on creative design ideas. If you look over to the side, you'll see highlighted in yellow the site. And one of our big concerns for them is traffic, because at build-out, they're planning 5,000 parking spaces, and they're surrounded on 3 sides by water. So they have one way in and out. So we recommended that they use an adaptive signal timing system that utilizes cameras and software to respond to real-time traffic. So if you were the 12th person in the left turn lane wanting to turn left onto I-95, there's a camera up there, and it's watching you and watching the cars. And when the last car goes through, the software triggers the signal to change. We finished our interview. We got to questions and answers. And the lead architect says, we like the idea of adaptive signal timing, but we understand from the city of Baltimore that they have not had much success with it. I immediately responded, Frank, that makes such perfect sense. Because if you look at the location near the water, Baltimore experiences a lot of fog. And when it's foggy, the camera can't see anything. Therefore, the software doesn't work. Now, I told you, I don't do traffic engineering. I design sewers, so how do I know this? But my husband over here is a traffic engineer and a graduate of Georgia Tech. And one night at the dinner table, he was passionate about telling me about this new technology. And this new technology uses radar that senses motion. So When the cars are no longer going through the intersection, the software triggers the signal. They were very satisfied with that. So we finished the interview. We went back and forth for about 3 weeks. We won the project. We were thrilled. But let's look back at what we did. We were curious. We learned. We had an abundance of knowledge, and we sold it with confidence, and we made sure that we had current knowledge. So now let's go to bucket number 2. Develop your personal brand. Now, I learned on the internet a great definition of personal brand. It's what people say about you after you leave the room. So think about it. Think when you're walking into a meeting or into a network session like we're going to have after this, and you're introducing yourself to somebody. Are you doing it with confidence? Are you being deliberate? Are you clearly stating your name and your credentials? Are you asking the other person questions and developing that relationship? When you answer the phone, do you answer it with enthusiasm and what I call positivity? Do you sound like a person somebody wants to hire? Do you sound like a person that somebody wants to work with? When you're typing your emails, are you being mindful about your audience? Are you being deliberate about your message? And if you're a consultant and you're emailing a client, I hope you're making a recommendation, because that's usually what they're paying us to do. Do you exceed expectations? Not just your clients and your supervisors. Do you exceed your own expectations, working outside of your comfort zone? So the last thing is be visible and available. And this is not easy, because this is something that you have to self-promote. And to put it in perspective, if you walk into your office every day and you walk down the hall and you do not interact with your colleagues, and you go to your cubicle or your office and you put in your headphones, and then in addition you eat your lunch there, and at the end of the day you walk back down the hall and you don't interact with your colleagues, you will become invisible. And if you are invisible, you're not going to be developing your career. And if you're invisible, you're most likely not providing leadership. And one of the balances and the tap dance of being visible and available is you want to be humble and gracious, although you're somewhat promoting yourself, but you don't want to be arrogant. It's a fine line. So now, a real life example. And the example is from the Atlanta Falcons Stadium. Arthur Blank tasked us with a minimum LEED Gold sustainability certification. That was a tall order for a stadium. The Arthur Blank Foundation tasked us with improving the surrounding neighborhoods, another tall order. The 25-acre stadium site, and here's a little sewer, and you're going to get a bit of it today, is located in a combined sewer basin. That means when it rains, all the stormwater mixes with all the raw sewage in the same pipe. And as that flow travels downstream, and that hydraulic grade line starts to come out of the pipe, eventually it comes out of the structure, and it floods. And it floods neighborhoods like Vine City. It floods their playgrounds. It floods their homes. It floods their streets. It's an environmental hazard. It is a health hazard. It certainly does not promote redevelopment. So as part of our sustainability charrettes, as we were brainstorming, we decided that we would really focus on collect and reuse. And the reason why this is a good example is because it highlights the personal brand and reputation of 6 to 8 really strong engineers and architects who are willing to make a difference. So we developed a concept. We had 14 acres of roof and plaza. We took 7 acres of the roof and plaza, and we did a lot of math. This involves a lot of rainfall data, a lot of math. We're going to really simplify it. 7 acres of roof and plaza. We drain it down through the system. We drain it down to the plaza. We run it through a water quality device, removing the first levels of solids and pollutants and settlement. Then we did a lot more math to size and design a 660,000 gallon cistern to store the rainwater. Then we worked very closely with the mechanical engineers to locate the central energy plant at the same elevation further to the south where it wasn't underneath the plaza. We also worked with the mechanical engineers to design a pump system that would pump the stormwater from the cistern over to the cooling tower, where it is used for makeup water, eventually evaporating into the atmosphere. So for every gallon of water that is collected and reused, it's one less gallon the owner has to purchase, one less gallon that came from the water treatment plant, one less gallon that's going back to the water treatment plant. But over the course of the year, as our cistern is filled and reused and filled and reused, there's hundreds of thousands of gallons of stormwater that no longer go in to that combined sewer pipe. So as we reduce the flows and we reduce the hydraulic grade line, when you get down to Vine City, we're pretty confident we're reducing the potential to flood. Now on opening day, maybe you'll be there. Maybe you'll be watching from TV and see a blimp shot, or not at all. But remember that underneath that plaza there's this 660,000 gallon cistern. And remember our responsibility as civil engineers and our protection for the environment and to make it a better and safer place for our citizens. The next bucket, something I don't think I really learned much of at Georgia Tech except for engineering economics, which I really did not thrive in. But learn the business of engineering, the why. One, it will influence your brand, but I can guarantee you, if you're a good engineer, it's a whole lot more fun if you figure out how to make money doing it, okay? And being profitable and being successful. So we've already mentioned relationships. The business of engineering starts with relationships, starts with getting to know people, starts with getting people to trust you and believe in you. And when you get a business opportunity, you have to really think through, is this something that we can do? We always say, don't hire an electrician to do your plumbing job. We have that responsibility. Is this something that we're qualified to do? And then if we're going to pursue it, we have to figure out step by step by step how to do the project. Then we have to figure out our resources, the people, the materials. How many man hours, woman hours is it going to take? How much is it going to cost? What are our deliverables? What is the schedule? And then we got to package it all up like we're marketing and actresses and everything. We do get help from marketing so that we can sell this. And then if we're fortunate enough to win, guess what? We got to do it. We got to make money at it. And we have to do it so well that that client is going to want to hire us again. So my next example, which I'm not clicking and that's intentional, in July of 2013, after we were busy on the Atlanta Falcons Stadium and we were feeling really good, we got a call to do a 50-acre due diligence study. And immediately, I had a little angst. Who was going to write the proposal? Who was going to do the work? But like I said, when you get an opportunity, you have to pursue that opportunity if it's something that will keep your people busy and add value. So we submitted a proposal. We went about 3 weeks back and forth. And the program manager revised the scope. We tweaked our fee. They came, they met us. It went on and on. It was going on a little too long. Then one day they sent us a non-disclosure agreement. We signed it. We sent it off. We got a call and they said, be at the offices of DLA Piper at 2 o'clock this afternoon. 3 of us walk in. There are 3 people in the room. They close the door. They lay out a big aerial photograph and they say, the Atlanta Braves are moving to Cobb County. It was a career whammy. And now we understood the non-disclosure agreement. We started in August of 2013 with a $37,000 red flag review. And during that process, we developed relationships with the Atlanta Braves. We did not know them before this time. We began to understand what they really needed to make this project happen. So over time, after we did the red flag review, we did environmental consulting and permitting. We designed and relocated 3 major pipelines that ran through the middle of the site that needed to be moved so the ballpark would fit. We did the largest development of regional impact study in the history of the state, a traffic study that involved 37 intersections and 30 driveways. We did conceptual parking plans. We've done the land development for the ballpark and the mixed use, the traffic engineering, transportation improvements, and now we're working on the traffic management plan. The $37,000 due diligence obviously grew into a multi-million-dollar contract. But guess what? It's really not about the money. The value is in the relationships that we've developed and the experience that we have gained that will help us add value as we continue our careers. But here's the real value in this experience. Listen carefully, big opportunities can knock softly. So our 4th bucket, develop your personal board of directors. When I was first introduced to this concept, it didn't register with me. But the more I've used it with working with other people, the more I believe in its value. So your personal board of directors are those people that will be with you as you travel on this journey of your career. They're people that you can trust and who trust you. People who will be direct and honest. People who tell you you're nuts. People who will encourage you to make a change. When you're a young engineer, there might only be 3 people around your table, yourself, a colleague, and a supervisor. But 15 years into your career, it might be more. It should probably include a client or 2, maybe some local politicians. It might include regional leadership, firm-wide leadership, if you're a national firm. But those people who will travel with you throughout your career and help you and be there for you. Now, the example that I want to use is leveraging a personal board of directors to develop a project-based board of directors. And the project is the pursuit of the Atlanta Falcons Stadium. In the year 2012, early in the year, we knew that the Georgia World Congress Center had a master plan and had identified a site for a future stadium. Working with someone on my personal board of directors, they recommended that we have a strategy. And the strategy revolved around the decision makers and identifying who the decision makers are and will be whenever this request for proposal comes out. So we identified first Arthur Blank. Well, I don't know about all of you, but I'm not having cocktails with Arthur Blank. But we knew that there would be a disadvantaged business enterprise requirement. And we work with a local sub who does work with the Arthur Blank Foundation and does work directly for a man who is one of Arthur's best friends and who we all knew would be the lead program manager on the design and the construction of the stadium. So check, we got that. Then our next group of decision makers, the Georgia World Congress Center. There were 2 or 3 people that are very influential, but there's also a board. We were doing a very precarious sewer project for the Georgia World Congress Center. We were trying to help them solve an issue with combined sewage flooding at their site. And it was a hard project, and we weren't sure if we were going to be completely successful. But we made sure that we were providing the best client service that we could so that we would be favored and supported if asked. And we're not going to fill all these chairs. The next chair is the City of Atlanta. I mean, the mayor's office, city council, technical people in watershed management. We reached out to Kwanzaa Hall, a councilman, not in his district, but the councilman who most promotes smart, sustainable design. And we didn't go to Kwanzaa and say, oh, would you recommend us? We went to Kwanzaa and said, can you help coach us? What should we do? And he had some good advice, and we followed through on that advice. And then our last chair remained empty, because that was the architect, and none of us knew who the architect was going to be. On December 20th of 2012, the Georgia World Congress Center issued their request for proposal on their website. That meant that every architect in the world had access to it. That was not in our strategy. And most of us were on vacation. And then, as we thought through our personal brands, our board of directors, what we stand for, a number of us, some of you here, we got together and said, we need to do a blitz. This is due December the 28th. There were 13 teams that submitted. We were on 12 of the 13 teams, which was pretty good. In April of 2013, we were finally awarded the civil engineering for the new stadium and eventually a large portion of the structural. We were awarded it with the one team that we weren't on in that initial submittal. So when we look back and we look at our project-based board of directors and our strategy to reach the decision makers, we feel that it was a very successful strategy. So the last bucket, and one of my favorite buckets for where I am now in my career, develop others. The why? I can guarantee you that nobody in this room is going to really be successful as a one-person act. That nobody in this room is going to be a leader if they don't have anybody to lead. So much of what we do as engineers revolves around our ability and our commitment to developing others and developing teams that further develop other teams so that we can add value. So when we look at developing others, and often when I say to a young engineer, will you be a supervisor? They'll say to me, well, I don't know what to do. And I often think they're expecting me to forward them a YouTube video on how to be a supervisor, and I'm sure there is one. But that's not what I suggest. What I suggest is to go back and look at your life. Go back to grade school. Go back to Girl Scouts and Boy Scouts, sports teams, church events, high school, college. Look at those things that people have done for you that have made a difference. Look at those things that maybe there are times that you wish people had done for you and make a difference. And then you use those lessons as you develop others, but most importantly, develop the relationship. So I have two examples on developing others. One of them Jim has already mentioned. Whoops. And this is our LIFT program. About 5 years ago, Kimley-Horn noticed that the data was saying that we were losing a much larger percentage of our mid-level women engineers and scientists than we expected, and much more than the men. From a business perspective, if over 5 years we lost 20 women, who in 5 years' time would all be doing at least $2 million worth of work, that's a $40 million delta on our bottom line. That's real business. So we got together and we analyzed the data. We read exit interviews. We spoke with some of the women that used to be with us and tried to understand why they left. And what we concluded was that we needed to focus on developing more successful leaders. We needed to focus on developing more successful business people. But lastly, we needed to provide more tools in a nimble environment for our women, primarily our women with young children, to integrate their families and motherhoods with their careers so that they could flourish. Then we realized we're engineers. People hire us to do engineering. So we should hire professionals. And we hired the firm of Flynn Heath Holt out of Charlotte. Next week, we will finish our second class of coaching. And all I can say is watch out, because the women of Kimley-Horn, sitting back there, are taking over. Now, my last example is my dear friend, Ed Ellis, who I worked with for years. And Ed always focused on doing the right thing. And that sounds so cliche, and it sounds so easy. But you will all learn that we work in very complicated political environments, very complicated social and financial environments. And sometimes we have to dig really deep to really understand what it means to do the right thing. But here's an everyday Ed example. I walk into Ed's office and I sit down and I say, I got a bit of a mess. I have a situation. I don't like being in this situation and I don't know what to do. He nods. I say, remember when Crescent Moon developers asked us to propose on their Midtown site? Once again, a site over a large combined sewer that floods, okay? So you get the theme of my career here. And even in our proposal, we made design recommendations of things to do to reduce their risk. They came back to us and they said, we want to use Kimley-Horn, but we want you to match the low bid. Now, we were coming out of the recession and we really needed this work. And Ed and I got together and we thought, no, this is too risky, and professional engineering is not a blue light special. So we walked, and we were actually a little relieved. And I said to Ed, Crescent Moon developers called me today. And in the last 3 intense storms, their parking deck has flooded with combined sewage. And if you remember, James Engineering did the work. And I went to Georgia Tech with James. And James is my friend. And I don't want to work against James. And Ed looks at me, a little puzzled at why I'm even asking, should we do the work? And he says, well, of course you're going to do the work, aren't you? You have the best team to do the work. You have the best team to solve the problem. But then Ed said, why don't you pick up the phone and call James and tell him you've been hired and that you're going to review his engineering? And then ask James, would you be available to sit down and meet with us when we're done with our review? And Ed said, that way you're starting on neutral ground. And what I've learned over and over is if we start on neutral ground, it enables us to embrace relationships and opportunities that otherwise we might have avoided. So now, when I go back to my first day at Georgia Tech, a little bit of encouragement might have been appreciated. But over the years, I learned to appreciate Dr. Caseman's directness and his honesty, because I was a long shot at Georgia Tech. But I stand here today, and I am overjoyed with having graduated from Georgia Tech. I am overjoyed that I have one heck of a career in civil engineering. And now I want to ask each of you to take these buckets, these skills, to help you develop your careers and help you develop your leadership skills. But then I want you to take these buckets as gifts and give them to other people as you help them develop their careers and their leadership skills. Thank you.
Thank you, Amy, for that wonderful talk, with something for everyone in there. We're going to go into Q&A, and so how it's going to work is we're going to put the microphone there. And if you have a question, then we are going to ask you to make your way to the microphone and ask it. We'll take about 10 minutes for Q&A. Okay, so any questions?
I have a question, but that's just too far to walk.
All right, we'll get someone to take the
I was
microphone.
just thinking of that question, and I can speak loud enough. Sure. You've had many, thanks again, Emmy, that was a great talk. You've had many projects over the year. Can you think of one that was, looking back, that sort of either changed your career or really was the most rewarding, and perhaps why?
Okay, actually there's a lot, there's quite a few, but I'll mention one. And one of the themes you'll find in life is it's usually the hardest and most difficult and challenging project that is the most rewarding. And the example that I would give is the expansion of Piedmont Park. And we completed it about 4 years ago, a 53-acre Northwoods expansion. And I don't know if you've been there, but it's a combination of program space and a huge focus on stream restoration and the habitat. And it was difficult for a lot of reasons. We had a lot of unknown conditions. We discovered there basically was an old garbage dump where we wanted to build retaining walls in a big plaza area. It was very difficult to get good survey information. We're dealing with City of Atlanta Department of Watershed Management, Parks Department, Building Department, Piedmont Park Conservancy. There were a lot of neighborhoods and stakeholders. And so my response would be, for a lot of reasons besides the engineering, that was a very challenging project. But every time I go out there, I am just so thrilled at the success of it.
You have a question in the back. So we're recording so that your audio will be captured on the video that you can just Okay, so with all the projects, okay, I don't know if you can still hear me.
I can.
With all the projects that you mentioned earlier, how do you balance the overlapping work and any potential stress while still striving for success?
Okay, the older you get, the harder it gets, okay? And I'll give you an example. Right now we have two big projects on Spring Street, NCR and High Performance, and it's very easy to confuse them. So to answer your question, I try to be thoughtful, and I often try to think before I respond for fear that I'm going to respond on a different project or something from the past. But the reality is I don't do any of this alone. I mean, and there's a number of you in the back row there that I work with. But we have amazing staff at Kimley-Horn. We really believe in hiring the best and really training them and promoting them, and they work so hard, and they make what I do so easy. Another question?
Okay, so Emmy, could you please talk a little bit about work-life balance, especially coming through your career and you know, the progression over time?
All right, so my husband and oldest son, both Georgia Tech grads, are chuckling back there, okay? My mother used to say to me, it's not the time in your life to have a clean house, and it's still not the time in my life to have a clean house, and we're empty nesters, okay? The balance I find, and it's really less a balance and more an integration, you have to make it happen. You can't sit at work and wait for your supervisor to say, oh, it's okay to go to exercise class, or it's okay to go have lunch with your parents. You have to make it happen. And you have to set limits. And you have to prioritize and do some things for you. So it always is a challenge. It always will be a challenge. It's still a challenge for me. I can tell you, when you're a parent and your children are young, it's a huge challenge. I said to my husband the other day, getting ready in the morning, I said, how did we do this? I mean, it's hard to do it now, and we used to get 3 kids up and ready into 3 different schools and so on. So if I were to recommend anything, I would just recommend that you make it happen, and you set your priorities and limitations. And that's a challenge because, you know, we all want to do well and exceed expectations, so you got to figure it out. Any other questions? Okay. Thank you very much.
Thank you very much, Amy, for a very thoughtful lecture. I think with something in for everyone. A lot of food for thought, but also for action. On behalf of the School of Civil and Environmental Engineering, we would like to give you a small gift, a token of our appreciation, and it's going to be presented by Rebecca Yu.
Thank you. I appreciate it. Thank you.
Thank you very much.
Thank you. Appreciate it.